Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Hope you're doing well on this not so sunny day. And we're really excited to have this opportunity to learn with Rachel Korazim, who a number of us, some of who are on this call, had the opportunity to learn with her when we were in Israel. And I know some of you are devotees of her regular sessions on Zoom. And in some way, I think having the opportunity to look at life in Israel through poetry is a breath of fresh air, and gives us a chance also to feel the rawness in a different form than we get by reading the news, etc. So I'm really, and I are really excited to welcome Rachel to our community. Dr. Rachel Korazim is a Jewish education consultant in curriculum development for Israel and Holocaust education. Rachel opens for audiences a window to Israeli society through literature, through stories, poems, and songs of the best of Israeli writers. She invites listeners to engage with Israel in an innovative way. Since the beginning of COVID-19, Rachel created a global community of hundreds of learners who meet to study Israeli poetry online regularly. Some of you are a part of them. Rachel teaches at Israel's well-known learning centers such as Pardes and the Shalom Hartman Institute, which is where I first encountered her, as well as numerous world Jewish communities. In her free time, Rachel enjoys scuba diving in the canoes of Playa del Carmen in Mexico and the amazing coral sites of the Red Sea. She is also a very active grandmother of 8 grandchildren who all live in Israel. And we're excited also to have the second in our series that are sponsored by Helena Diamond Glass in memory of her parents, her beloved parents, and also in honor of Yom Ha'atzmaut Israel at 76. Rucha הבאה, Rachel.
Bruchim, bruchot hanimtzaot. Thank you everybody for gathering to do this with me. As you can see, if you see the background of where I'm speaking from on my screen, to the right-hand side of my head, there is a window and it's getting dark because the sun is now down and evening is here in Israel. It's 7:30 p.m. So it's wonderful to be with you while it's the middle of the day back there for you in New York. As Felicia, Rabbi Sol had introduced me, indeed, since COVID, I have created this learning community on Zoom, and we regularly study Israeli poetry and literature. And I wish I had the time to tell you. I like to tell stories about this very special community, but I am not going to because we have another goal for today. But doing that and being a part of the Jewish world, as all or most of us are here today, tonight, we have a certain rhythm of going about stuff. And one of the things you know, and rabbis know that, and Jewish educators know that, and Jewish students know that you don't create Jewish courses during the summer, right? People do summer stuff in the summer. And then you don't create Jewish courses during high holidays because people do high holidays during high holidays, right? So I was getting ready for my new semester to start after Simchat Torah. Like every normal Jewish educator in the world, the word starts after Simchat Torah and then ends around Shavuot, more or less. And I had it all planned out with the material and the resource material and the PowerPoints because I'm teaching on Zoom, etc. And then October 7th happened, which was Simchat Torah. I was not even at home. I was in Budapest, which is another story that I like to tell in detail, why Yossi and I oftentimes spend the high holiday period in Budapest. But I'm not telling it to you now. We are very connected to the Jewish community of Hungary for our roots, for our knowledge of the language, for my years of work with that community. That we'll have to do now. And we even have a pied-à-terre, a small apartment where we stay, and then came Simchat Torah. And obviously we were in shock, and obviously we were not sleeping, and obviously we were glued to the screens trying to get a ticket to get back home because flights were canceled. You know all that. You don't need me to share that with you. On the first Shabbat after October 7th, I could not sleep. So it was 2 a.m. in Budapest or 3 or whatever. Who knew and who remembers 6 months ago seems like years and years ago. So I was digitally shul hopping in America, where most of my friends are and rabbi friends. And one of them is not so far away from you, ladies and gentlemen. That's Central Synagogue of Manhattan and my friend Angela Bookdell. And you probably know the American Jewish community much better than I do. And you know that there are amazing things that one can say about Reform congregations in America. Knowledge of Hebrew is not one of them, right? And I trust that Rabbi Bookdal knows that better than I. And yet she went on a bima that Friday evening and she started her teaching and her sermon in Hebrew. And the first words she had said were Ein milim, no words. And she was there whatever time it was in New York, and I was there whatever no time it was in Budapest. And she was talking to me. She's a friend, and I knew she was talking to me as well. And then a few minutes into her sermon, I found myself arguing with my friend Angela in my mind. And then I continued when she spent time with a group in my home a couple of weeks ago. And I said, Angela, I agree. You do not have words. I for sure do not have words. But there are people out there who do have words, and they are called poets. And I'm going to go out there and start looking for them. And this is actually what had started, what I never knew what it will develop into. I canceled the program that I had prepared, which had become totally irrelevant. And I started creating poems for our days, and then poems for our days number 2. And by the end of the semester, it became poems for our days number 12. And then the semester break was over, and we are tomorrow finishing the following semester with yet more poems for our days. So by now, dear friends, I have collected over 80, and made and was helpful in creating translations of poems that had been written in all parts of Israeli society and being written right as we speak. And of them, I have started choosing, and I chose a collection for you, for the group when you were in Israel and we met together. And then I made another choice for us today, thinking that maybe some people who have been to Israel are here as well today, and I didn't want to repeat. But there will be one poem that I will want to repeat. I think you will accept, we in the Jewish world sort of have this custom and going back to texts time and again, and we do not think it's a bad thing to go back a second time to a text. So let me start from that point by pulling on the screen my PowerPoint presentation for you and sharing it with all of us as best I can and clearing the screen for you so you can see it well. And what I like you to pay attention to, beyond the fact that this indeed is a session created for Bnei Yeshurun, and this is also a moment for me to tell you that should you want to have the PowerPoint presentation, all you need to do is let me know and I will send it to you. If you think that you could use it in your teaching or whatever, just like the resources that I have sent you. This is why I put the banner of the group I speak to, because this is my reminder to tell you that. And I want you to glean 2 pieces of information as you look at the screen. Because if you are teachers of text, be it poetry or sacred text or other, if you are students of text, you know that we study text and poetry, and I'm the teacher of literature of poetry, of people who have been published, and you can find their books in bookstores, nicely bound or paperback, and you will have them on your shelves at home and in libraries, and then there will be a ton of reference books, and then there will be learned articles and PhD dissertations written about them, and then when you want to teach them, all you need to do is do the research and read as much as you can and have the patience for, and then construct your lessons. None of that practice of years was there to serve me when I started to create these sessions. Most of the people that we are studying in these sessions, not all, but many, have never been published so far. For sure, no learned dissertations have been written about them. You cannot yet find their books in bookstores or in libraries, but there is a great, great advantage and an amazing resource that I did not have before. And this is the fact that I collect these poems digitally from Facebook, from other social media, from literary supplements of daily papers that one can find digitally as well. And then the other major resource that I have is that all these people can be reached digitally. And you can write to them on Facebook or any other media, and then you'll get their email or their WhatsApp number. And in half a day, you are already speaking to them on the phone, and you can interview them, and you can invite them to your classes and participate in the learning together. And this indeed what had happened with many of them, but it's a totally, totally different learning and teaching experience that I'm sharing with you. And another thing that we may, having seen the audience and being myself of a certain age, I will also, not wanting to be ageist, but still to point out how young these people are. We are listening to people who had not yet acquired a fame in the field of literature through age and experience and many publications. We are hearing fresh, raw voices. From the pictures you see on the screen, I think the only one who had published a book of poetry already is Del Rodriguez Garcia. All the others do not think of themselves as poets. They are people who have other trades and professions, and they also write. The poem that we have studied here in Tel Aviv when we met, and we are going to start with as well, is the one called Homefront Command, New Regulations for Small Talk by Lital Kaplan. I chose that because it meets us at the very point that I have shared with you a minute ago, and that is the sensation that something had happened to our words. Something had happened to our language. So this is where we are starting today. And just join me as we look at the poem called Homefront Command, New Regulations for Small Talk by Lital Kaplan. And what I normally do, what my normal teaching pedagogy practice is to start with the Hebrew, then go to the English, read and discuss. I am going to follow my practice with a small difference. And the difference being that I want to start with the title in English just to make 100% sure that you all understand that the title is literally tongue-in-cheek, that the title is ironical. Nobody throughout these 6 months since October 7th had ever told us or given us regulations on how to talk. We are allowed, if we can, to speak the way we always spoke. However, there is a sensation coming from the early days following October 7th that all our life is being in the hands of Homefront Command, that military branch that controls the life of civilians during wartime. And they tell us if we need to be evacuated or we can stay at home, if schools are going to open or stay closed, if we can gather or go to shul, what are we to do should the siren sound, what are we to do should, God forbid, our home on the home next to us was hit by a rocket, etc., etc., etc. So the writer, Lital Kaplan, who by trade is a social worker, is sort of tongue-in-cheek turning to Homefront Command and is saying, well, guys, if you are that smart and you know how to tell me everything I need to know, will you please tell me how to speak, because I have lost my language. I have no words anymore. So let us go now to the original Hebrew, then read the English, and then discuss a little bit. הנחיות פיקוד העורף החדשות לשיחות חולין, ליטל קפלן. מה נשמע בוטל? ובמקומו נשאל מה נשמת, מה נשבר, מה נשאר. מה קורה נאסר, ובמקומו נתהה מה קורס, מה נקבר. ובמקום מה שלומך החצוף נקדיר פנים מול חברנו ונשאל מה מלחמתך. ובמקום התשובה השגורה בשגרה עליה הוטל וטו חמור שבחמורים, אצלי הכל בסדר, יש להשיב הכל בסדק, והמקפידים בדברי אמת יענו הכל בשבר, הכל בשבר. Homefront Command New Regulations for Small Talk by Lital Kaplan. What's up cancelled? Instead use what's shaken up, what's beaten up, what's blown up. What's going on? Banned. Alternatives? What's breaking down? What's forever gone? Instead of the rude, how are you? We must frown in the face of our friend and ask, how were you? And instead of the standard response forbidden by strict veto power, I'm fine in fact, it is required to say, everything cracked. And the truthful ones will answer, everything is shattered. Everything is shattered. Let me take you from the top, and fully assuming that most of you do not have Hebrew, and yet I want to take you, sort of hold your hand metaphorically, take you to the Hebrew and see together what is it that we are losing in translation, what more fine aspects you want to be able to see beyond the translation. Let's look at the first line, what's up, cancelled. When indeed you speak Hebrew and you want to address a person you know and ask them, what's up? What you are saying literally is, manishma. I don't need for you to know Hebrew. I'm just asking you to listen to the sound, manishma, because whether you speak Hebrew or not, you know the sound shma from Shema Israel, hear, O Lord. So the Hebrew expression is not about what's up, it's about what you hear. What are they talking about? What's the gossip? What's up? Manishma. And when our poet Lital wants us to understand how language is now changing, she says, suggesting that one is cancelled. Don't use that anymore. Use, instead of manishma, manishmat. Change one letter and it will be word dropped. Another letter, manishbar, what's broken. Manishar, what's left over. And she offers the same treatment to the expression what's going on, which is banned now. What's going on in Hebrew is makore, just listen to the sound. And she's suggesting instead makores, breaking down. Manikbar, buried, forever gone. And now we slowly are reaching the third stanza, the third verse, which is more or less the center of the poem. And centers of poem are interesting because oftentimes they are indeed the heart, the beating heart of the poem. So let's pay attention to that more carefully. Instead of the rude, how are you? How did it transpire that an expression so basic in our conversation, like mashlomech, mashlomcha, how are you, the one we never think about. You see a person after you have not seen them for a while, and you ask, how are you? And you'll do that on their Facebook page, and you'll do that in an email, always, not even thinking. What needed to happen for that simple everyday expression to become rude? I'll tell you what, and for that I need for you to listen to the Hebrew again. So Felicia, we are going to pretend we are having a conversation in Hebrew, and I'm turning to you and I say, Felicia, ma shlomech. And even if you do not speak Hebrew, I'll repeat, ma shlomech. You can hear the word shalom inside, ma shlomech. So actually in Hebrew, when we ask a person how they are, we literally verbatim ask them, are you at peace? Is there peace with you? The other option of meaning for that expression, ma shlomcha, ma shlomech, is to listen again to the word. It's not only shalom, it's also shalem, whole. So actually, when I am asking you, Felicia, ma shlomech, I'm also asking, are you whole? Are you together? Are you complete? Now that you have these two meanings of the Hebrew expression, you can probably better understand how it became rude. Because honestly, can you turn to an Israeli these days and assume that they are at peace and ask them about their peace? Who is at peace? Can you really turn to an Israeli these days, maybe not only in Israel, even you, and assume that they are whole, that they are in one piece, that they are shlemim? No way. So that expression became unusable, rude. I want to take you a step further, and in order to do that, I want to talk to you about a poet that I love dearly, and it's absolutely fine if you never heard about her. You're going to hear today. She died many years ago. Her name was Zelda, and she had a last name like most people do, but she was so well known and so beloved that we always speak about her by her first name only. Zelda was an ultra-Orthodox Hasidic woman. She was a first cousin to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, so this way you can guess her last name. She was Schneerson before she got married. And Zelda wrote beautiful poetry for which you have an amazing translation into English by Marsha Falk that you ought to look up if you love this type of women voices in poetry. And in one of her poems that I love dearly, she gave it a title that says Shlomi. Now that's a little bit weird because the expression, the word Shlomi, is not a freestanding word like shalom. Shlomi means my peace, but this is the kind of word that you would use if Felicia was to ask me, Rachel, ma shlomech? I would say, Shlomi, ta-ta-ta-ta, and then I will tell her or not tell her. So we'd like to imagine that the poem that Zelda had created under this title is an answer to a question. And Zelda was fortunate enough to have a beautiful, beautiful married life to her beloved Chaim. Too short, unfortunately. He wasn't a well man, and he died after 20 years of their life together. So you can imagine these two people, they never had any children. Waking up in the morning, maybe in bed, and Chaim smiling on Zelda and asking her, Zelda, ma shlomech? Or maybe they are sipping a cup of tea on their porch in the afternoon, and again Chaim is turning to Zelda and asking, Zelda, ma shlomech? And now comes the answer poem, in which she said, Shlomi kashor bechut leshlomcha. Chaim, my shalom, my peace is tied by a thread to yours. Like, don't you know that? If you're okay, I'm fine. And you have that saying in English, in American English, that one is as happy as our least happy child. Our well-being depends on others that mean a lot to us. That particular line from a poem had appeared on buildings in Israel immediately after October 7th, like this one. This is the Pelech School. It's a girls' school in Jerusalem, and the poster says, Shlomienu kashur bechut el shlomchem. Our peace, well-being is connected by a thread to yours. And they mean the hostages, of course. Please understand that Zelda's picture does not feature on the building. It's I who had put it just on the slide for you to see. When I am asked these days, since October 8th or 9th, Rachel, ma shlomech? I use the Zelda quote, Shlomi kashor bechut leshlomam. I am as well as the hostages. My well-being is tied by a thread to theirs, and I mean the hostages, their families, their loved ones. I am married to Yossi, who is a professor of social work, and what can I tell you? Poetry is not exactly his thing. But the poor guy is married to me, so what can he do? And in those early days after October 7th, he tells me, so Rachel, that Zelda thing is a little bit too complicated for me. Is there something simpler? And I said, actually, as a matter of fact, there is. There was this other poet, Chaim Gori. You can see the dates. And in one of the poems that he wrote late in life, he was well over 90 when he wrote it, he says the following: מה שלומך? שואלים אותי ברחוב אנשים למיניהם. שלומי כשלום עמי אני משיב להם. How are you? They ask me on the street, all kinds of people. I am as well as my people, I answer them. So if you were to meet the Korazims, by that I mean Yossi and myself these days, and you would ask Yossi, Yossi, מה שלומך? He will say, Shlomi kishlom ami. And if you will ask me, I will say, Shlomi kashor bechot leshlomam. My well-being is tied by a thread to theirs. In both cases, in case you have any doubt, it means not so great. And this is the poem after which I like oftentimes to stop for a minute, and it's really not compulsory, but just give you the opportunity, if there is something there that spoke to your heart and you want to make a quick comment about, if there is a question that you would like to ask, we can afford a few minutes for that. You may want to use your digital hand if you know how to do that, or just traditionally wave your God-given hand in front of the camera and hope that either Felicia or Rabbi Matalon or myself will see it and will call upon you. Any question or comment at this early stage? This poem oftentimes arises reactions, so this is why I'm giving you this opportunity. And as far as I can see, I don't see any raised hand. Becca, was that a raised hand a minute ago? No. Okay, so why don't we go back to my plan as I have planned it for you. And we are going to the next poem, and now we are going, if you wish, away from the collection that we had when you were here in Israel. And as we are going, and I use the term as if it was geography, away, by that I mean that we are going to not focus only on the immediate hit, but we are going to try and see as if there was a stone that was dropped in water and you have the concentric circles around. Other populations, like not the immediate hit in the kibbutz or not the immediate losses at the festival, but rather the people adjacent to them, another circle and another circle. For the next poem, I need to teach you an Israeli lullaby before I teach you the poem, because the poet is indeed in conversation with an earlier text. This time not a biblical text, this time not a prayer text, but a lullaby. It will become clear why she does that, but let me introduce the lullaby to you. The lullaby was written by Leah Goldberg, and it was written in her very early years in Israel. Leah Goldberg, who had lived and died between the years 1910 and 1910 she was born, and 1970 she passed away. She did not even reach 60 when she died. She comes to Israel in the mid-30s, so this is well prior to the state, and oftentimes people may think in terms of pioneers, new immigrants, drying swamps, planting trees, picking oranges. Well, think again. Because when barely 25 years old, Leah Goldberg, arrives to Israel. She comes with a PhD degree in Semitic languages from a Berlin university. You know, it's not exactly your stereotype pioneer of the 30s of the 20th century. And soon enough, she will get an editing job and she will start publishing amazing poetry and then translations of classic poetry into Hebrew. And then she will be the person to create the faculty for comparative literature in Jerusalem in the Hebrew University that I was so hoping to be able to attend and study with her, only she died before I reached the postgraduate level, unfortunately. Why would a person like that, who one of our professors who oftentimes gives lectures about her, Ariel Hirschfeld from Hebrew University, emeritus now, once referred to her as Imperia shel Sifrut, a literary empire. Why would a person like that write lullabies? That's an important thing to understand. Because Leah Goldberg, like Bialik, like Alterman, like others who are active in those years, and they are part of this tremendous effort to work towards an upcoming, hopefully, sovereign Jewish state at some point, they know that sweaty pioneers and rah-rah soldiers will not be enough. If you will want to build up a society with schools and kindergartens, parents and teachers will need stories, will need poems. So these great national poets, like the names that I have mentioned a minute ago, your Alterman, your Bialik, your Chernichovsky, your Leah Goldberg, they have all written children poems and songs and lullabies. I am reading a classic to you, the English translation, and I'm not reading the Ivrit because I will have you listen to it in one of what I like, one of the renditions that I like. So, the Hyacinth song. Night by night watches the moon at the garden flowers bloom. At the hyacinth buds in our tiny garden, night by night watches the moon. And the moon says to the clouds, give a drop more to the garden's grounds. Let the hyacinth bloom in our tiny garden. So says the moon to the clouds. Came the rain and in my window rang, for the flowers in my garden a merry song it sang. And the hyacinth answered in joy and merriment to the downpour that on my window rang. And tomorrow to the garden will we go, and there see the flower white as snow. Honoring the hyacinth, my son will sing the hymn, and great joy will be had in the garden. I'll have you notice some of the strong elements of lullabies, and that's a repetition of natural, everyday things. We are putting a child, a toddler, to bed. We want to create peace and quiet. So night by night, this is regular, Laila, Laila. And then it's about the moon peeping. And then the rain may come, don't worry, even if you hear it, it's fine. The flowers need it. We will go see them tomorrow morning. There'll be a great happiness. And it's my child, and it's the parent to the child. Perfect. Let's give it a couple of minutes of listening to it so you know what I'm talking about, and then we will continue with the today poetry. Bevakasha.
לילה לילה מסתכלת הלבנה בפרחים אשר הנצו בגינה בציצי היקינתון בגננו הכתום לילה לילה מסתכלת הלבנה תנו טיפה ועוד טיפונת לגנים, שיפרח היקינתון בגננו הכתום. כך אומרת הלבנה לעננים.
Okay, this will do for now. If you were an Israeli parent or grandparent, if you grew up in Israel, you would know this song. You would have had it sung to you. You would have had it sung it to your children, in my case to my grandchildren, and God willing, maybe I will have a chance to sing it to my great-grandchildren. My oldest grandchild, Shira, is 22. It may yet happen, you know. All children knows it. It is also sung in kindergartens as they are going out to plant flowers in the garden and so on and so forth. Now we come to our poem, and you will see why it was so important for me to bring you into that Israeli language, into this Israeli language of codes, of known songs, of known poems that everybody shares, and therefore poets can quote when they create their new poetry. So let me take you there. Tfilah by Avital Nadler, who is a speech therapist. כשתחזרי נשב רק שתינו במקלחת. את בתוך המים הרכים, אני מולך. אכפוף בעדינות את שערך, אמחק את כל זיכרונותייך. אשיר לך שיר על יקינטון וגשם שדגדג את החלון. אנקה היטב בין אצבעות רגלייך כל גרגר של מנהרות. אספר לך על ירח שזרח כל כך הרבה לילות כאן בלעדייך. אמחה את דמעותיי מעל פנייך, ודמעותייך ישטפו בזרם מים רך ישטפו. אקלע צמא בשערך, אלביס אותך פיג'מה, ורק שתינו במיטה, וחיבוק של דאגה ותקווה ואהבה ופחד, ותפילה שלא תהיה הפעם הבאה. Prayer. When you return, we will sit just the two of us in the shower. You in the gentle water, I facing you, will gently wash your hair. Erase all your memories, will sing to you the song of the hyacinth and of the rain tickling in the window. I will carefully clean between your toes every speck from the tunnels. I will tell you about the moon that shone so many nights when you weren't here. I will wipe my tears off your face. The gentle water will wash them away. I will braid your hair, dress you in pajamas, just the two of us in bed, and a caring hug, and hope, and love, and fear, and prayer that there will never be a next time. I want to start addressing this, to me, heartbreaking poem by suggesting that the title Prayer is about the last line, that there will never be a next time. Because as per the return of the daughter, it is stated as a fact when you return. The poetic voice in this poem does not allow even a prayer come into the possibility that the daughter is not coming back. When you return. And then I will pray for this never to happen again. There is a wish, there is a will, there is a force there making it a reality when you return. Just in case anybody is in doubt, I hope you understand that the person addressed in this poem is not a child who needs a lullaby. It's a grown-up daughter who is a hostage and who needs the cleansing, who needs the shower. Grown-up daughters don't have their mothers give them showers. This is a very unique event when the mother wants to go back to take care of the child to whom who knows what had happened to this body. And look at the wish. I will gently wash your hair. You go from the outside and into the inside. Erase your memories. This is the wish that she would like to cleanse. Beyond we go into the sand and the grain. Your mind first. But look at really, it doesn't make sense. I want to erase all your memories and then recreate the old ones. We'll sing to you the song of the hyacinth. The child for sure remembers the lullaby that we do not want to erase, or let's erase everything and we'll start afresh and I will teach it to you again. Look at the hint here. The fear is coming through. I will carefully clean between your toes. That may be a reference to last rites, to cleansing of Tahara. Maybe the daughter is not coming back alive in the fears of the person addressing this. Every speck from the tunnels. I will tell you about the moon that shone so many nights when you weren't here. Wipe my tears off your face, okay? And the cleansing water that we know about from mikveh, from tahara, from everything. We need to recreate. We need a rebirth. We need something that for now is not attainable. And then a total undermining of the lullaby structure, because lullabies are all about repetition. Laila, Laila, every night, every day. Be reassured, my baby. This is the routine. It's safe. It's sure. It's coming back every day. And here, a total undermining of that structure. God forbid there should be a repetition of that there will never be a next time. So we have moved from the circle of the immediate losses and atrocities to the people who are touched by them. Parents, siblings, grandparents, total communities, kibbutzim, who are now on day 194 of the moon coming up and shining not unto them. So, you know, one of the special things I like to note about this poem, that this yet is not addressing a situation in the past. This is addressing what many of us are living right as we speak. It's not over yet. And who knows what is happening to them. So for a person to, you know, find the strength, the power to go into these deep, painful places in the hearts of people whose loved ones have been taken away, another word for them, takes courage, but also tells you that it's needed. And maybe our poet writer here, Avital Nadler, had come close to one of these families, maybe in her family, maybe in her professional work of speech therapy. She is giving words to those who are choking for lack of words from the Ein Milim. She is taking upon herself to give words so that a prayer can be whispered. So let us as well take a deep breath as we go to the next one, which will also be touching, but in a very different way. So Avital Lehman is one of the few people whose poems I have found online and couldn't reach out to. Somehow nobody knows if she's not on Facebook. I wrote to a Facebook page where she had posted her poem but got no answer. So I'm continuing. So I'm using my imagination and what I can glean out of the poem. As you can see from the picture I have added on this slide as kind of an illustration, this is a group of people doing some artwork and kids. and there are some adults working with them. And we will learn from the poem that this is taking place in one of those hotels where the evacuated from the kibbutzim in Otef Aza, in those kibbutzim and moshavim just around the Gaza Strip, have been evacuated. Now, I don't want to just go over this word, have been evacuated from the kibbutzim or moshavim, as if we understand what we are saying, because we don't. Because after the hours and hours, and sometimes more than 24 hours, until rescue came, until the military arrived, until the police arrived, until they could be evacuated, those children have been hiding in cupboards, under the bodies of their parents who fell on top of them, in the back seat of the car where father or mother were shot in the front seat, etc., etc. So the people working with these kids, I do not know if they know already at the time that this is written what every single one of these children had gone through, what they are carrying in their hearts. As I read the poem, and we will read it together, what I can share with you, of course, is the fact that probably it comes from the point of view of a person who spent time with these children and watched them and listened to them, a social worker, a therapist, or just a volunteer, maybe even a rabbi, I don't know. עכשיו צריך לבדוק. במלון המפונים בים המלח היא אוספת יפה יפה את שיער הבובה בסרט. קושרת, מנקה מקטרות, מנצנץ על הסרט, ואז שואלת, תגידי, אני חיה? ואיך יודעים שאני מתה? מה הייתם עונים לילדה בת 4? רק מי שחי יכול להתחבק. בואי נתחבק ונראה אם אנחנו בחיים. אחר כך היא אומרת, גם מחר בבוקר נבדוק. Nowadays one has to check, by Avital Liman. In the evacuees hotel by the Dead Sea, she carefully gathers the doll's hair with a ribbon. She attaches a sparkling pipe cleaner to the ribbon. And then she asks, tell me, am I alive? And how would they know if I were dead? What would you say to a 4-year-old? Only the living can hug. Come, let's hug and see if we are alive. Later she says, tomorrow morning, let's check again. I'd like for us to follow this carefully, because the writer Avital Liman is starting by describing as if she is standing on the side and watching the kids. She sees this little girl in the evacuees hotel by the Dead Sea. The English says she carefully gathers, but look at the Ivrit, he osefet yafe yafe. Osefet yafe yafe is kids' language, is the way you speak to children. Tenake yafe yafe, teshev yafe yafe, nice, nice. The translation is more adult language, but the original gives us really, she echoes the sound of how kids are spoken to. And then there is all this care of the doll with her hair and the sparkle and the ribbon and the decoration. And then suddenly out of the blue, when you think the child is doing fine, she's doing artwork, she's playing with a doll, she must be okay. Suddenly she turns to you with this question. Tell me, am I alive? And how would they know if I were dead? So just try to imagine what that child must have experienced and seen with dead all around her. And now the writer, the poet, the therapist maybe, is letting the child do her thing for a minute, and she quickly turns to us, the mavens. Okay? Okay, what would you say to a 4-year-old girl? Yalla, rabbis, therapists, doctors, tell me. What would you say? And she comes out with an answer that I think is brilliant on two levels. On the therapy, psychological, you know that you need to have to give something tangible, something that the child can understand, a kind of a litmus test. Let's do it now, let's hug. And I assure you that dad cannot hug. So if we can hug, we are alive. Could it be also a reassurance for the speaker, for the poetic voice, that she too needs to do something in order to make sure that she is alive? And the child accepts this, hugs probably, and then shares the notion that we all know. This is not going to be healed with one smart answer. There'll be tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and a slow uphill fight in order to bring back some security, some safety to these children. But I want to take this a step deeper, because in our tradition, and I think it is linked, in our tradition, there must have been at one time back long ago when somebody needed a reassurance whether they were alive. And the verse says, Lo habetim yehalleluya. The dead cannot praise God. As if scripture says to the believer, if you can pray, you are alive. That's your litmus test. Lo hametim yehalleluya. It's not the dead who can do that. You, the living, can do that. Do it. And in the same way, we are now creating an age appropriate for a 4-year-old girl. Lo habetim yehalleluya. Habechabkim yehallelu, habechabkim yichyu. Let's hug. Let me once again give you a chance after these two poems, if there is any sort of wish or need to ask or comment before we continue. Let me just know. Rabbis are eligible as well, you know. Nothing? Okay. Nobody? Shall I just continue then? Okay. Let me continue. We are now coming to a very different poetic voice by the person about whom I have mentioned as we were watching the pictures that he is the only one among the other writers in this particular collection that is a published poet, also an educator, an observant Orthodox man. I'd like to start our addressing the poem that is to come with a quick Hebrew class, if you wish. And that is what is written on this graphic, which is a poster, a sticker, a t-shirt that I have. Kol hutar lepirsum lokeach li od chaticha min halev. The expression we are going to study is the one with the big letters, hutar lepirsum. Each cleared for publication takes out another piece of my heart. On Israeli media, radio, television, digital, when the news person is starting whatever they need to say with the expression cleared for publication, in Hebrew, hutar lepirsum, cleared for publication, immediately after that will come the names of the fallen soldiers or civilians of the last 24 hours or last night or whatever. And oftentimes the losses occur during the night, so it's in the first round of news around 6 o'clock in the morning that we start hearing that chilly expression, cleared for publication, hutar lepirsum. And here the person who created this poster says that every single time these two words are mentioned, they take out another piece of my heart. This is what it means. Into that reality comes the poem of a Dael Rodriguez Garcia. And in order for you to understand exactly what the expression means and why it takes out pieces of your heart, if you are listening to it on television, this is what will follow, the pictures, every single time. Now that you have that in front of you, let us read. הותר לפרסום. הותר לפרסום כי ליבנו נשבר. ובמסתרים בחדרים ריקים רבבות יבבות נחנקות בלי קול, הותר לפרסום כי דמנו הותר. ונבזזנו באפלה מן היקר מכל יקר. כבר הותר לפרסום כי זיוו הקסום המבהיק מפני זה שאהבנו קבע. אבל תחת אותה אדמה כבר מנץ צמח עקשן משריש עד אין קץ ונלפת אהבה. Cleared for publication. Cleared for publication that our hearts are broken. And in hidden places, in empty rooms, thousands of sobs are choking silently. Cleared for publication that open season was declared on us. We were plundered in the dark of the most precious of the precious. It is clear for publication that the magical shining light of our beloved's face is extinguished. However, beneath the same soil, a stubborn plant is sprouting, sending roots without end, tightly grasped with love. Let's go slowly. We need to take this slowly. First statement, cleared for publication that our hearts are broken. It may seem so obvious that doesn't need to be stated, and yet, in Israeli culture for years and years, the expectation from bereaved parents and siblings and family and friends was to hold back, not to show grief in public, not to weep by the graveside. There would be even criticism if the television would show soldiers weeping at the funeral of a friend. The enemy once does this, you shouldn't do that. The greatest compliment for years would be after telling the story of a fallen soldier, and the father did not shed a tear. And they never told you how many fathers after years committed suicide because it was not okay for them to show their grief in other ways. So when Dael Rodriguez Garcia is coming from the heart of Orthodox, Zionist Orthodox, serving in the military, etc., a male voice and saying loud and clear, cleared for publication that our hearts are broken, it's a moment in Israeli culture. I accept this. If you will join me on longer and deeper courses, I will show you how women poetry had started addressing this 20, 30 years before our guy poets have started saying this. So we are experiencing a moment. But look at this guy. He goes immediately underneath again. And in hidden places, in empty rooms, thousands of sobs are choking silently. I want to take you here into a very special experience that myself, together with Michael Bonin and Heather Silverman, who are the translators that I work with. What normally happens is that I do a raw translation, like telling them what the poem is about. And then they too have two different roles. Michael is a Jewish scholar. I mean, he has another day job, but he is honestly a maskil. And he will pick up on the allusions, biblical, Talmudic, and others. There is a sort of not declared but existing kind of competition between the two of us, because I, being who I am, an Israeli, mainly by and large secular, will easily pick up on biblical allusions because we study Tanakh. I will pick up on literary allusions. When it comes to a Mishnah, Gemara, rabbinical, etc., it's Michael. He's a diaspora scholar. He knows Talmud, I know Tanakh. It works great. And so and Heather is the one who comes from English Lit. She's a professor of English literature. She will make sure that it sounds like a poem in English. And this is how we created this team. We've been working together since the beginning of COVID. When we have the translation, we send it back to the poets with the allusions that we have picked up for them to react. And the L immediately came back to us and says, guys, you are missing an allusion. So very quickly, from Heather in Palo Alto and Michael in Newton, Massachusetts, and myself in Jaffa, and the L in Yerushalayim, we created a Chavruta that you are now invited to join, as the El had sent us the text that he was referring to. Hidden Places is a reference to a Talmudic discussion of Jeremiah 13:17. If you do not heed this, my soul will cry in hidden places because of pride. Our sages explained that God has a hidden chamber where he weeps for Israel's pride, which was taken from it and given to other nations. The sages questions the presence of weeping, since in 1 Chronicles 16:27 it says that it is joyful in his presence. The sages explained that in the innermost chambers are for hidden weeping, while in the outer chambers there is no weeping. Talmud Chagiga, etc. Can you see how the El is struggling with the weeping, with cleared for publication? How he himself is hiding reference to loss of pride, to shame, to hubris in what had happened to us on October 7th. Our pride was taken away, given to others. In between Jeremiah and Chronicles and Rashi and Talmud Chagiga, you go into really the inner chambers to understand the Israeli psyche. It's not only the pain, there is a sense of shame. There is a sense of needing to hide for what was happening to us. Thousands of sobs are choking, cleared for publication. That open season was declared on us. You need to see something important. Cleared is hutar, 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 as you can see in the English. But damenu hutar, our blood was made free, open season, is a different expression in English, but it's still the same in Hebrew. So the Hebrew, the El is praying with the multiple meanings of the expression hutar, permitted, allowed, cleared. And in the English, you need more than that to see. So that too needs to be cleared, explained. And then it will say, now let's go to the real meaning, says the El. That if the open season was declared on us, we were plundered in the dark of the most precious of the precious. It is already cleared for publication. In case you didn't get it, what it means when they said the name, that the magical shining light of our beloved's face is extinguished. And now come the closing lines. However, beneath the same soil, a stubborn plant is sprouting, sending root without end, tightly grasped with love. Honest, I was angry at Dael to read these last 4 lines. I said, Dael, hold on for a minute. You need immediately to serve the consolation, the nechama. Let us grieve for a moment. Hang on. What's this rush? But what I didn't know, and oftentimes you need to listen carefully because poets have a way. The poem originally was posted on Facebook a little bit after Hanukkah. And as we went through the translation and back and forth and the chavrota, it all take time. So by the time I was ready to teach it, it was on the week of Tu B'Shvat. And little did I know that on the day of Tu B'Shvat, people will go out into the site of the festival, into the sites of the kibbutzim, and will start planting. That this was the need of the families, and I could be critical of the El, and he must have sensed something that I didn't, because poets oftentimes do. So I am full-heartedly sharing my inability to accept the 4 lines that offer consolation at the end of the poem immediately, and yet admitting that the poet must have known or felt something that I didn't. I want to offer you one more poem by the El, which is short and concludes this mini cycle of poems about fallen soldiers. And the graphics that I gave you is a tzedakah box. And I'm sure that all of you do tzedakah, but probably nowadays digitally, or maybe still sending checks. I don't know when we last have dropped coins into a tzedakah box, but I wanted for that to be remembered because the El is using that as a metaphor for a fallen soldier. חייל נופל כמו מטבע לקופת צדקה, נחבט בפרוטות הנחושת, בסתר הוא נופל בסתר. הוא מציל ממוות, הוא מתקרקש עם אחיו, הוא נושק לפניהם החלודים מזיעת הקרב, ואביו ואמו פושטים את ידם, מבקשים להשיבו דרך הפתח הצר. As we go into this poem, there are 3 notions that I want for you to carry with you as you go into the English. One is what we get from Proverbs 10:2, that tzedakah saves from death. It's a saying, it's an expression. You will find it on walls and gates of cemeteries all over the Jewish world. Tzedakah tatzil mivavet. The other percept that we need to remember is the Maimonides principle, when he talks about the levels of the tzedakah, that the highest form of charity is when it is given anonymously. And indeed, this is why tzedakah boxes serve for, that those who could afford could put in whatever they could, and those who needed were given, and neither one nor the other knew who was the giver and who is the recipient. What I want you to understand in this poem or follow is the dynamic of moving from the side of the donor to the side of the beggar. Fallen soldier. A soldier is falling like a coin into a tzedakah box. He bumps into the copper coins. Secretly he falls, anonymously. Don't worry, it's the highest level possible. And the ones who gave the gift are probably the parents, right? And he falls secretly, anonymously. He saves from death, yeah, according to the biblical notion, but also literally, his death probably prevented other deaths. He rattles with his brothers, now the coins imagery. He kisses their faces as he joins his new kehillah. Rusty with sweat of battle. Note the mix of metaphors. Coins are rusty, soldiers are sweaty. And his father and mother are stretching out their hands, begging to bring him back through the narrow slit. The donors have become the beggars, and nothing is coming out of this metaphorical tzedakah box. So we are reaching the time limit that I have even asked for, So let me bring it now back to you, dear friends, and invite you this time, third time, for comments or questions should you have any, and then I'll have a short thing for conclusion.
I think we'll take your conclusion, Rachel, because time is definitely up.
Miriam raised her hand. Can we give her the 1 minute?
Yes, one.
Very quickly, it's really good to see you again. I met you in January in Israel. And this evening, I'm giving a talk at a New York City synagogue on our Israel trip. So this couldn't come on a better day to take me right back to Israel. And I thank you for this presentation and work today. Thank you.
Thank you. So Felicia, if you think you need to conclude, that's fine, because what I wanted for conclusion is the blessing for the 5th cup that I have sent to you anyway, that you can share with the community.
Okay. Actually, you want to close out with it? Because I don't know that.
I could, yeah.
Yeah, why don't you do it?
No, actually, I didn't include it. I'm sorry. I wanted to, and then I did not. So I will just tell you that poetry and ritual texts are being written right as we talk. And as of yesterday, I have seen online a beautiful blessing for the hostages with a 5th cup at the Seder. I sent it to Rabbi Sol so she can share it with you. And with that, I would like to conclude by wishing all of us as good and as happy a Seder as possible these days.
We want to say so much gratitude to Rachel for her exquisite teaching of these both exquisite and heartbreaking poems. I think that encapsulate something that you can't again touch in other ways, and opening windows into this moment in time in ways that in some ways we would prefer not to know, but the poetry actually gives us that chance to access something. And I would just invite folks to use the poetry at your Seder. That's the way to be in connection with this incredible body of work that's happened from a moment that we never would have wanted. And so thank you to Rachel for her extraordinary teaching. We hope there'll be more opportunities for different times in the story of our.
For sure, let me know. Let me know.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you,
please
everybody.
share the Pesach poems with whoever may want to use them, which I sent.
I will see if we can send the packet to the folks who are signed up to this. Thank you so much. Rolly had to leave. Becca and Rolly are really grateful for your being here. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
And thank you once again to Helena. Bye-bye.